Across generations, through survivors, wanderers, and nations, God protected one single bloodline, and it leads to a man named Abram. The world was silent in the years after the flood. The waters had reshaped valleys, carved new rivers, and washed away the memories of the old world. Only 8 people survived: Noah, his sons, and their wives. And from these few, the earth would grow again. As the land dried and the people multiplied, each family branch began to form communities, settlements, and the earliest nations. But hidden within this growing human web was a single thread, an unbroken line God had chosen for something far greater than the world could imagine. From Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, came families that spread outward like rivers from a single spring. Japheth's descendants traveled north and west, settling in coastal regions and forming tribes that would one day become mighty nations. Ham's descendants moved southward into the warm lands of Africa, Canaan, and Mesopotamia, builders of cities and empires. But Shem's line remained close, preserving the knowledge of God, passing down stories from the old world, holding tightly to the faith that Noah carried through the waters. The legacy of Shem was not marked by power or military strength. It was quieter, rooted in worship, devotion, and remembrance. Shem taught his children the name of the Lord, the story of Eden, the tragedy of sin, and the hope God had spoken in the beginning. His descendants built simple homes, raised families, and lived in the lands eastward, never knowing that through them, the greatest promise ever spoken would one day be fulfilled. As generations passed, people multiplied rapidly. Villages became towns. Towns grew into cities, and cities became centers of pride, ambition, and power. Humanity began again to drift away from the God who rescued them. In their pride, they formed plans not merely to survive, but to make their name echo across the earth. The story of the nations was changing, and not for the better. In the plains of Shinar, a bold idea took root. "Let us build a city," the people said, "and a tower that reaches heaven. Let us make a name for ourselves so we will not be scattered." Their unity was strong, not in worship, but in rebellion. Thousands of hands carried bricks. Kilns burned hot. Clay became stone. And slowly, a tower rose toward the sky, symbolizing humanity's pride and defiance. But God saw everything. He heard the plans. He watched the construction, and he knew where this path would lead, toward corruption, arrogance, and ruin. So the Lord came down to scatter their pride. Languages shifted. Words broke apart. Confusion spread like fire. Workers shouted but could no longer understand each other. Chaos filled the city, and soon the people abandoned the tower, leaving it unfinished, a monument to human arrogance. Families separated according to their new languages. Tribes migrated outward. Nations formed. Clans settled in distant lands. The world grew wider, divided, diverse. What men built in pride, God dismantled in a moment. Yet, within this scattering was something deeper, a divine preparation. Because from one of these groups, from one family, God was shaping the future. Even as the nations spread, the line of Shem remained intact. His descendants, Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Reu, Sereg, and Nahor, continued to pass down the stories of old. Fathers told sons about the flood, the ark, and the God who speaks. They taught them the warnings of the tower. They preserved the name of the Lord when so many others turned away. And among these men, God watched one specific family with great intention. Generations later, a man named Terah was born into the line of Shem. Terah lived in the land of Ur, a wealthy, bustling city known for trade, culture, and idols. It was a land of gods made of stone, gold, and wood. A land where people bowed not to the Creator, but to the creations of their own hands. Yet in the midst of this idolatry, one of Terah's sons would rise. One who would not follow the gods of Ur. One who would listen for the voice that called creation into being. His name was Abram. Born into a city of idols, surrounded by temples and false gods, Abram's heart was strangely different. He wondered about the sky. He studied the patterns of the stars. He watched the sun rise over the desert and somehow knew, these were not gods. There was a greater one. A real one. A living one. Abram's curiosity and quiet faith set him apart long before God ever spoke to him. Abram did not yet know that he was chosen. He had no idea that his name would echo across thousands of years. He did not know he would become the father of nations, the ancestor of kings, and the root of a promise stretching into eternity. He lived an ordinary life, tending flocks, honoring family, and searching for meaning. But heaven already knew his destiny. God had watched him since before he was born. His steps were guided, his heart was shaped, and soon, everything would change. The world looked dark, nations worshipped idols, pride had scattered people far from God. But through all the drifting, all the rebellion, and all the confusion of languages, one line remained faithful. The line of Shem, the line of the promise. And from this line, Abram was rising, the stage was set, the world was ready, and God was about to speak for the first time in generations. The story of the nations had led here. The story of Shem had led here. Everything was pointing to one moment. One call, one covenant. Next time, the voice of God breaks through the silence. Next time, the promise begins. Next time, Abram hears the words that will change the world.